I'm not going to spend a load of time on it. I know that a few of you guys wanted me to finish this off, so I'll jump right in there. I'm going to move the chat window over somewhere where I can see it and sort of work and see you guys feeding back on it. Okay, so let's. I'm going to back up a few steps as a quick little reminder of where we left off, and we'll go from there. Okay, a couple of things too. I'm going to start the screen sharing here in Discord for those of you who are not watching on Twitch, just so you can follow along here. I'm doing a double stream, so let's let's see if my PC can handle it. I think it can. 11 gigs of VRAM ought to be good for something. Okay. Oh, you guys are installing Maya. That's cool. That's cool. Got my laptop this time so I can follow along in Maya if we end up using it today. We likely won't, unless you guys want me to touch on it briefly. Yeah, I say that out loud. I'm stopping and thinking, yeah, you know what? We will touch on it briefly. Because as much exposure as I can give you guys in terms of Maya, I think the better it will be for you guys in the long run. So we will delve into it very briefly today. Okay. Remember that sequence, guys? So there was a lot going on there, which was really, really cool. The big thing I pointed out last class was the communication between the two minion guys and that nod of acknowledgement and all that kind of stuff. Silent golems. All right. So I want to talk a little bit about shot design because I think it's very, very important to sort of discuss these things as we go along. One of the things that I always do when I'm storyboarding or doing any kind of shot design is to ask myself, how can I maximize the storytelling information in a shot? So when we take a look at this shot, this is a functional shot that's supposedly supposed to reveal the symbol on the ground and all that kind of stuff and the three remaining survivors. It was good that they pulled out wide because the previous shot, the minions line, or the one guy's line was, oh well, gold splits better three ways. So it's nice to have a camera shot to just remind the audience there's three of them left, right? So we go nice and wide. But there's a little bit of foreshadowing, right? Remember Hitchcock's rule. Hitchcock's rule is the more significant an object is, the larger it is in frame. Oh, I think I got that backwards. I think he said the larger an object is in frame, the more significant it is to the story. Look at what's large in the frame. It's the pillar. So it's a little bit of foreshadowing because these guys are going to be glued to these pillars afterwards, right? So there's a little bit of foreshadowing, visual foreshadowing there. As well as the fact that we've got nice shape language here, i.e. the tops of the pillars end in spikes. So we got that sense of danger. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about color theory as well, right? So let's talk about this particular shot. Okay, so you guys notice the color transition, right? So what's the color doing in this shot? See that color transition, right? Color only visible in the light. It's not dark. It's not dark, right? So here's an interesting thing we'll talk about a little bit later. especially in terms of what's oftentimes called high dynamic range lighting or the use of day for night shooting. But we'll talk a little bit about that. But you feel like it's dark. Warm to cold transition. Thank you. Yes. So we got a warm to cold transition. Now, you guys are in the first year, so not everybody will know color theory. So we'll talk a little bit about that, right? When I talk about color. But there are certain colors that are warm that really grab your attention. They say in a lot of color theory classes that warmer colors pop or they jump towards you. That doesn't really make sense. The best way I can describe it is that your attention goes to it and they feel somewhat nearer. Cool colors, they sort of feel further away and they don't really grab your attention, right? Although warm and cold colors aren't really pushing objects in distance. It's just your impression of that object. So we've got the warm light that says, look, the immediacy of the action is happening on the ground level, right? And then a very cool color here, right? So what is the cool color designed to make you feel? Uneasy. Yeah, I can see that. I don't think that was the intention of the designers, but yes, there is a psychological relationship of a little bit of tension and the color blue, but I don't think that that's or actually no, there's yeah, that's why I'm trying to think about this. It's actually the opposite. Sorry, there's a little bit of tension that's related with any warmer colors, but cool is supposed to be sort of relaxing, right? Calm blue oceans and all that, right? So, and there's a reason why blue has sort of a calming effect on us, and it's because of the sort of the physical representation of the color blue in the world around us. Blue sky is comforting, blue water is comforting. It's all life-giving stuff, right? So anything that's blue is generally life-giving. There's water, there's air. Oh, is anybody else having really bad connection problems at the moment? It could be because I'm multi-streaming. Yeah, it might be you, but it could be on my end as well. In which case I might have to kill one of my streams. Because it's not really the graphics adapter, because after all, everything has to be funneled through my internet connection, so that could be causing issues. I got it. No trailer sound. I can hear everything else though. No trailer sound. Okay, so there's occasional sound buffering. I wonder if no trailers. Is it anybody else hearing the sound from the trailer? We don't necessarily need it at this point because we're doing a visual breakdown, but it would be nice. Oh, okay. So, yeah, I can't hear it either. Okay, so that's probably my end then. Okay, you guys can't hear sound from me. Sorry. You can hear me though. You can hear me speaking, but you can't hear sound from anything that's on display in my computer. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so that's on my end. And it's just weird. I woke up this morning and I fired up the computer and it no longer detects my sound card. In terms of an output audio device, it's sending everything to my headset. So that's probably what's going on. As long as you hear me talking, that's okay. We don't need the trailer sound. Okay, so let me talk a little bit about what's going on here, right? So there's two things that the color blue is doing, right? So remember I said that blue really pushes detail away from you, i.e. the warmer colors draw your attention, the cooler colors we tend to ignore. So therefore we get the psychological impression that blue colors are further away. I will show you a couple of tricks in terms of Blade Runner, how they use color to make things look even further away. So this ceiling probably, if we had used a different color theory for this ceiling, this vaulted ceiling, it probably wouldn't look as far away as this treatment on it. This treatment makes it look really far away, right? And it's also sedate. Remember we talked about emotional contrasts and how they sort of help storytelling? Well, if you really want to punch up a surprise, right? You contrast it or you juxtapose a previous shot that's really calm. So if you got a really calm shot right before the really intense shot, it magnifies the intensity of that shot, if that makes sense. So what the filmmakers are doing is they're trying to ease you into a false sense of security with this color theory. And they're showing you, because we find out later that this is the entry portal for Lilith, right? They're trying to say that entry portal is far away, right? So that's kind of what's going on from a storytelling and a shot design perspective, right? It's wonderful sound editing. I know you can't hear the sound, but at that moment, he's reading off the pillar, and the words, "Hail, hail, the Creator," happens right there at that shot. That's great. I guess you could say those three had a gut feeling. Ha ha ha. Nice. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about this shot and how important shot design is in terms of creating a sensation, right? So, what is happening to our main character? He's being choked out with a forearm choke, right? So, how does that feel when you're being choked? I don't know if any of you guys have ever experienced being choked out before. Instead of asking the question, I'll just walk you through the description of this, right? So oftentimes when you're being choked out, there's that feeling of claustrophobia and the world closes in on you, right? And so the shot designers want us as the audience to share the experience of the priest. Yes, it really hurts, right? Definitely really hurts. So what have they done to help you as an audience empathize with the priest? What have they done shot design wise? Okay, so I'll be real literal about it, but take a look at the shot, right? Take a look. They have actually cut it into quarters. And they jammed our priest guy right in the upper corner. There's like no room. There's an angle that makes him appear smaller, more vulnerable. Yes, what is that angle? Describe that angle. His attacker looks bigger for a reason. Look at this. If we cut the screen in half, more than half is given to the attacker. More than half. So he occupies so much screen real estate that we feel claustrophobic. Bingo. Perfect. That's what we want the audience to feel. Claustrophobic. Yes, the big guy is looking down on him as well, right? So there's a sense of power. Even though we have an eye line above, the priest's eye line is above the big guy's eye line. It's a slight down shot. It's just that the big guy has lifted the actor up, right? But we're still sort of in an intimidating pose. We can see that from the angle of his eye line this way. So that gives us the sensation that he's looking down on the priest, right? We also split the screen in half again and fill the lower half of the screen with his forearm, because that forearm, when it's pressed up against you, feels like the only thing in your world, right? So let's fill the screen with it, right? And this little space up here will let the priest, his head occupy, right? So, yeah, it's meant to trigger claustrophobia, right? This is effective shot design. So the placement of the actor, the placement of the framing, and the actor inside the frame, all are designed to achieve what? A particular feeling in your audience, right? And this is a very successful shot, right? In addition, we have the lighting where we've got sort of the character partially in shadow. Okay, so let's continue on. There's been a lot of different ways of portraying altered states of consciousness. A lot of fun ways of doing it. This is one. This is called a double exposure, right? So you see the image sort of split and kind of waver, right? Now this is the purest shot design to create a feeling, right? What I mean by that is that you can't really visually capture disorientation or the feeling of it. So you have to do these visual tricks that feel sort of similar, right? So one of the best camera shots that captured just sort of a feeling of lightheadedness for me was in the movie Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, where the main character loses a very important poker match. And the way they constrain the camera and the way they use double exposure and the way they use cross dissolves really all coupled together created that feeling of, oh my God, I feel like I'm going to be sick. So it was really good. All right. So we've got that sort of disorientation. So again, this is very, very cool, very, very clever, right? So one of the things that we do here is clever creative focus, right? So why is this guy out of focus over the shoulder of the big guy? Oh, I'm being joined on Twitch by Drax on YTB. Hey, how's it going? Thanks for joining us. My screen is lagging. Okay. Would it be okay for you guys if I turn off the Discord screen sharing? Are you guys tuned into my Twitch? Or are some of you... No, as in don't turn off the Discord? Okay, on Discord. Is it the Twitch lags really bad for me? Okay, all right. So it just might be lagging on both at the moment. Twitch lags a lot more. Crikey, using Discord fully instead. The reason why I want to keep doing the Twitch stream, though, is because it stores it for you guys to access later. Can't even open the stream on Twitch. Holy cow, that's another issue. All right, well, we'll see if we can figure that one out. Is the lag bearable? Like if I were to slow down and discuss a few points, would that be all right? It's not horrible. Let's try and soldier through. See if we can get through it. I am in the process of setting up a new MuMimo router, which I'm hoping will solve a few of these issues for me. But right now, I'm just pumping through downstairs bog standard TalkTalk router. So that could be part of the issue as well. Okay. All right, yeah, let's soldier on. I'm hoping that this is streaming to Twitch okay. But, you know, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. So I was talking about creative focus. So obviously, look, this guy's filling up the priest's world. He's occupying more than half the screen, and his eye line is directly at us, right? Which is really cool. It's that intensity of gaze, right? And then he's out of focus because the creative focus is trying to mimic the periphery of our vision. So we're not really focused. We shouldn't really be focused on watching him. We should be focused on watching him. And then when the next bit happens, boom, right? So it's like we catch that out of the corner of our eyes, and it's that much more frightening, right? So that's a very effective use of clever sort of focus, right? So again, we see that all the light has gone out, right? So everything's gone completely dark. Now this brings up a very, very important point. about realism in lighting, right? Do you guys think that that lighting switch is realistic? So a few people are typing right now. I want to know if that lighting change is justifiable. Well, the torch is gone. Okay, fair enough. Let's take a look. Right? So that's the torch light. So the torch light is gone, right? There's a light switch nearby. Yeah, definitely. Now, here's the question, right? So we got justification for the light source with the torch, right? So it's believable. It's too quick, yet gradual for flames to just extinguish. Yep. Yeah, the torchlight was taken away with the guy. Yeah. It might have to catch up on all this later. Having a ton of problems trying to watch. Even trying on my phone, and that's not working either. Oh, that's a bit of an issue. Okay, well, we'll try and soldier through, and then I'll take that away and think about it. See if we can come up with a better solution for you, Joe. No, here's my question to you guys. Going back to the lighting, is that important? Is the justification of the light source and the believability of how quickly the flames extinguish, is that important? Sort of a trick question, I suppose. A little bit. I'm curious to see what you guys think. Okay, so there are no thoughts coming through. So I'll answer my own question. The justification of the light source and the believability, or rather the realism of the light source, is not important when we're dealing with escapist sort of fiction, right? Now, this is a very, very important consideration because oftentimes when you go to do lighting in a scene for the very first time, the thing that you will do straight off the bat is place functional lights. So you will sit there and go, the window's over here, I will put a light there. The light fixture's up on the ceiling, I will put a light there. If I were to tell you, create a CG prop with a lampshade, put a bulb in there with an emissive texture, but take the point light that radiates the light and put it there. You'd be like, what? What? The light's not coming from the light source? Yeah, that'll mess with your head a bit. Because the rule for lighting in film, TV, and games is light for the drama and justify the light later. Right? And even when you do justify the light, it doesn't have to be massive. Case in point, do you ever watch nighttime scenes where characters are driving in a car at night, right? And they're lit by the dashboard. They're not lit by the dashboard. No dashboard on the planet would light them the way they're lit in a driving scene. They're lit by a couple of 1K lights, maybe less than that. A couple of Kino lights. Yeah, a lot of dashboards ain't got no lights. They'll put some Kino lights on the lap of the actors, pointed up this way, and then we'll gel it, whatever color they want, and there's your dashboard lights. Right? Same thing when a character goes to sit down at a writing desk in the middle of the night and turns on his desk lamp. Boom! He's completely lit. Right? Because that desk lamp that he turns on is not lighting him. He's being lit by the gaffer and all the lighting kit in the set, on set. And it's all timed to fire at the same time the actor turns on the desk lamp. Right? Watch very carefully. Right? Because lighters know one thing. You light for the drama. and then you try to cheat it so that there's an impression that the light is coming from an object. So, case in point, with the desk lamp, there could be a light under the desk lighting them. There could be a light coming in from a slight off angle. But because we as the audience see click and the light go bunk, come on, we think that that actor is being lit by the desk lamp. Job done, right? So you guys think that that torch goes out, and that's why those lighting conditions change. But I guarantee you, this scenario, the actors are not being lit by the practical light from the torch, right? It's just something I want you guys to consider. Light for drama, and then justify the lights later. So again, that cool color. That's a typical horror movie reveal. Love it. Still works. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about camera moves. So the one thing I like about doing these trailer type analyses and these video clip analyses is we get to talk about many, many different things in terms of shot design. So, watch the strike. Right? What did the camera do on that strike? Okay, watch the whole strike sequence and let's talk about what the camera is doing. Watch carefully. Cool. Very cool. I love it. And super subtle. Probably didn't notice it the first time you watched this. Yeah, that was the previous shot. I'm talking about this strike on the guy who was the leader of their group. So I'll play this back again. Right? So what happened with that particular camera shot? Yes, okay. So now let's talk about the speed of the camera too. So the camera rushes in at the moment of strike. Why do that? Why have the camera rush in at the moment of the strike? And follow the weapon. Why is that? Yes. Yeah. To add power, to add emphasis. Right? And also a slight disorientation because it happens suddenly. Boom! Right? To emphasize, make the moment more powerful. Absolutely. Then why this? Then why this? Right? What did the camera do right after the strike? Watch. Strike. Then why that? What is the camera doing? Right? Right after the strike. What's the camera doing? Let me see if I can time this. Okay. Right after this. Yes. But it's not a zoom. It's called a push in. So the camera's actually pushing into this face. Slowly. Right? Slowly. What is achieved by that? Why do that? Remember I talked about last class? The difference between a close-up and a long shot? And what they do to us psychologically? The close-up brings us into a more intimate relationship with the person. So if we're talking to a stranger at a store, we're usually more than an arm's distance away. But if we're talking to family members, we're a little bit closer. If we're talking to a partner or a lover, we're like nose to nose close. So the close-up gets us into a more intimate relationship with a character. And the reason why we want to get to that intimate relationship is to figure out what they're thinking, right? So the slow push in is one of the best techniques to replicate realization or a character going through a thought process, right? So we got this big guy who's delivered the death blow, and we want to see his reaction. Why do we want to see his reaction? Because of what happens next. This little bit, right? Okay, so I'm going to let this play through a bit. I love that. I love that shot sequence of their guts coming out because you don't see it. This is just wonderful, wonderful. You hear all the sound effects. You see their horrifying reactions, right? Like in the hands of an inexperienced cinematic crew, it would have been just like, yeah, let's show the chest rip open and all the guts coming out and it'll be gory and it'll be cool. It is not cool. It's much cooler to build a little bit of tension and anticipation first, right? Just hinting and teasing at what's going on, right? Because it lets our imagination do so much work for it. Up here in the upper corner, they give us a little hint of what's going on, right? And then we cut wide again, right? So we need to cut wide to show the audience what exactly is happening, right? You know, it's one thing to write in a script, their guts come out and they form a triangle. But then it's another thing of how are we going to shoot that? How are we going to show that to the audience really quickly, right? We can't labor the point, right? And that upshot is great too because it shows the blood forming the exact symbol on the ground that we see. As transformations go, that's not bad, you know. One of the things that we struggle with in terms of concept art is trying to figure out how to do transformations or possessions or things like that, right? And it's one of the many assignments that you would get as a concept artist, right? So producer might say, okay, this guy transforms into a demon. How does that happen, right? So we do everything from the physical, where you can see, you know, just the flesh bubbling up and, you know, like a werewolf transformation, to the decision here where it's more of a lens effect, right? So it really sort of depends, but that's one of those things that's both difficult to do and a whole hell of a lot of fun to do, right? Now, everything's monochromatic so far, right? Monochromatic, but then we've got the blood red. So that really stands out because of the monochromatic color design, but then we also have complementary colors on the priest, right? And that really, really brings out the symbology on his chest and everything. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about animation, right? So, look at the pose of the priest. That's really, really sophisticated posing. It could have, you know, been enhanced by performance capture from the actor, right? So think about this. In the script, all you would probably get is the priest is frozen with fear as the demonic priest ushers him forward and he flies against his will towards the priest or something like that, right? So how do you represent that? Well, in the concept art, you might show the character kind of flying, the body flying forward against his will. But look at the performance, right? Yeah, the hood only covers the back of the head. That's cool. That's a nice design choice. But the way he's curled in together, very protectively and nervous, it's just this wonderful performance in terms of really kind of understanding how nervous and fragile and protective the priest is. The good old eye reflection shot. That's great. This is an incredibly powerful shot. Also, just excellence in animation, right? Right there. Just in his eyes. What's happening there? No eyebrows. No, I don't think it's no hope. I don't think it's no hope. No, I don't think it's that either. The realization that he's fucked. I don't think it's that either. I don't think it's giving up either. Now, I have the advantage that I can hear submission. Yes, we're getting closer. So I have the advantage of the dialogue. So I will tell you what's being said. Right? So prior, the priest says, the demon priest, this guy here, you came to the darkness for knowledge. That's the line in the previous shot. You came to the darkness for knowledge. Then we get this shot. And then he says, yes. Right there. Right? So submission is close. Acceptance, yeah. Acceptance. Right? I would argue that this is the point where we firmly understand that this timid priest is actually a bad guy. Yes, the feeling that he's meant for something bigger than himself. Yes, absolutely. He's reminded of the reason why he came here, right? So why do you think I say this moment arguably solidifies the fact that our timid priest is actually a bad guy? Why do you think I make that bold statement? His timid expression changes. There's a there's a moral story reason that I say this is the moment where I feel that he is a bad guy in the story. It's more than just he's wise. What does the priest want? What does the priest want? Let's answer that. What does he want? Knowledge. Yeah. What is he willing to do to get it? That's evil, isn't it? Willing to sacrifice Everybody, even himself. Now he no longer cares what happened to the three bad guys. Arguably, they're bad guys, right? So, whatever, right? There's no honor among thieves, but he does not care about anything. He read the inscription on the pillar saying that this is a summoning. We need to get out of here. But at this moment, he's just like, nah, I want knowledge more. Right? Sacrifice others that might not even know. Yes, that's evil. I'm about to waken Lilith, a demon, and unleash her upon this planet. But I don't care. I came here for knowledge, and that's what I want. Do you see how the creators of this trailer tricked us? Well, not really tricked us. I believe a lot of times villains are created or sort of villains are written incorrectly. And we'll get back to your demon assignments, right? I would like to button that up today. But bad guys are written incorrectly by the vast majority of people, especially inexperienced creators, right? Because when we create villains, we create people we hate. And we're, at the moment of creating a bad guy, we're passing judgment on the bad guy. And that is a massive mistake, right? Because then you will create a cliche bad guy. The minute you create a bad guy where you're just like, well, I kind of relate to where he's coming from. If he were slightly different, actually, I would agree with him or her, right? You're starting to empathize with the villain that you create, and you are creating a far more powerful villain, right? Because what is one of the most powerful traits of a villain? Seductiveness. The fact that a villain can convince you to do wrong is a whole hell of a lot of evil power. If you can convince your audience to almost like the bad guy, whoa, that's going to seem even more powerful. And the way to do that is you cannot pass judgment on any of your characters. You have to sort of be there for your characters and understand where they're coming from. So I was listening to a podcast from Aaron Sorkin, and he was a writer of the feature film A Few Good Men. I don't know if you know that Jack Nicholson famous scene where he's being persecuted in a court of law for sending soldiers to his death or being responsible for the death of a soldier. And finally, Tom Cruise breaks Jack Nicholson's character on the stand, and Jack Nicholson says, "You want the truth? You can't handle the truth." Right? That famous line, right? Because a villain in his own mind justifies what they've done. So Jack Nicholson says, you can't handle the truth. Because when it comes down to it, when you want to feel safe, you want men like me on the wall, guarding you, protecting you, right? So it's a very altruistic villainy. Do you know what I mean? And that makes the evil that much more powerful, if you can understand where the bad guy's coming from. Bad guys sometimes are trying to solve the same problems as us. Their methodology is what makes them evil. So think about the Galactic Empire. What is the Galactic Empire trying to achieve? They're trying to achieve galactic peace. If you think about it. That's pretty laudable, isn't it? Peace in the galaxy. Nobody at war. Isn't that what we all want? Universal peace. This ought to be interesting. So the Galactic Empire, yes, very much so. What makes them evil is how they go about it. Now, not saying bad guys can't have evil ideology. They can. I'm just saying one way of crafting a really effective villain is by giving them a purpose that we identify with, but their methodology is evil, right? So the Empire's power is absolute, that kind of a thing, right? So, yeah, there we go. Bad guys. The priest is a bad guy. Okay, there's an advert, but a good place to sort of pause this. This reminds me of a scene in Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of power. Now, the one thing I wanted to ask you guys about is as the priest is turning upside down. Did you catch that little hint that the incantation was creating magic? Let me play past this advert. There you go. I'll play it again. Right? Okay. So, this is a brilliant camera shot. I love it. He's turning upside down. See that little flare? I mean, this is a creative choice, right? It's awesome. And the camera blurs a bit, yes? See that? Little flare. Tiny little flare. Tiny. And it's subtle. And we blink, we miss it. But it gives that subtle feeling that magic is being invoked, right? This is a fantastic shot. I think it's the first shot where we see the full effect of the guts coming out. Now, most inexperienced storyboarders would lead with this. But do you see how much more powerful it is if we save that shot for our timid priest? Right, boom. So, did you guys see sort of the color work? What's happening with the color? That's super subtle, right? See the slow reintroduction of saturation, right? And up until this point, everything was monochromatic and cool colors, right? It punctuates that moment, right? They look mainly red, yeah, but again, warmer colors, right? Yes, the saturation does increase with Lilith's arrival. Absolutely. That's fantastic. So we don't get the reveal of the name of the character until the moment the hand touches the evil priest's hand, right? And we got this bloodshot eye that really kind of focuses on that particular moment. It's fantastic. It's really brilliantly done. The one thing that I've argued in the past over that I would argue for again here is I don't really think you needed the flashbacks. In fact, I think the flashbacks took you out of this feeling that you're looking at a self-contained event deep in the bowels of the planet. And then when you show a flashback, you're introducing the outside world. I wanted to maintain that feeling that you're trapped in this event that nobody else knows about, right? But the flashback serves the purpose to show how truly evil this Lilith character is. So this was sort of an interesting choice to me. And I think it's quite good, right? So we've got, check this out, we've got tiny little pupil movements and dilations and things like that, right? Yeah. See the tiny movement in the eyelid, right? And then all motion stops. So we know right from this shot that timid priest is now dead, right? But why did we cross dissolve to a different shot of the same angle? So I think that's kind of interesting. Look at that. That's so good. What is falling to the ground? Blood petals. Yeah. Looks like rose petals. Or confetti. Things that are generally associated with celebration. How ominous is that? That's just, oh my God. And yeah, it looks angelic, but it's not. How freaking cool is that? That's so good. Brilliantly designed. Brilliantly designed. Okay, a couple of different things. So, the priest is arguably armored up a little bit, right? So we have Lilith's barefoot touching the ground. Why make the decision to have Lilith wear nothing? Yep, Tom, you can take off. It's cool. Why the decision to have Lilith in bare feet? You could have Lilith arrive armored up. Most natural state, yep. Makes her seem more animalistic. Yes, partially. It's very primal, right? Very, very primal. Because you have nothing encumbering you from the outside world, right? Also, nudity is equivalent to vulnerability. So this is the other thing I think is a wonderful juxtaposition of ideas, right? Without armor, without clothing, arguably Lilith is the most vulnerable, right? And yet she's not. She's incredibly powerful, and any kind of introduction of armor will just make her even more powerful. So that kind of idea is very, very intimidating, right? That's why the Terminator worked as well when the Terminator showed up on Earth. Okay. Now watch the performance of Lilith here. Remember, an animator's in control of it. You guys will be in control of this. You will make these decisions. So when you get a performance note or you get a snippet of script, you might have something like Lilith arrives and surveys her future kingdom or something like that. But you have to make choices as an animator to kind of build on that and enhance that. So, did you catch that eye animation? She doesn't, first of all, when we cut to her, she's not even looking at the priest, right? Not even looking at the priest. Doesn't care, right? So that's a testament to just where she's looking speaks volumes about her character, right? Everything is beneath her. Did you see the dart of the pupil? It went 3 different levels. Remember, you're rotating the eye and keyframing it, right? So that's deliberate, right? Now, you guys might not know this, but your pupils dart like that when you're rapidly absorbing data and making formulations, right? So she's looking at everything, taking everything in, analyzing it. And we feel that in her character. We feel that she's just looking coldly at everything and evaluating it, right? Do you guys get a different take on her performance here? I can say, yeah, she's evaluating her surroundings. But some of you out there might have a different interpretation of the performance. For me, it's a very cold and calculating series of facial animations, right? And then, of course, we have that amazing, amazing closing shot where the membranous blood material forms her cape. That's just phenomenal. And that's just pure design heaven. Brilliantly, brilliantly done. Okay, that's that. Okay, any questions or comments or thoughts on that? You guys all good with that? Just checking real quick to see. I've got you guys until 12. Right. Okay, cool. Okay, cool. So we're leaving that behind. Now, the last thing I'm going to talk about, I might as well take these off, actually. You guys aren't even talking to me. You're just texting back and forth, so it's all good. Yes, a lot more work goes into it than you initially thought. This is why I find this hugely valuable. I'll only do it this one time, unless a really cool trailer kind of comes out. But I just wanted to show you where I'm taking you guys in terms of craftsmanship, in terms of attention to detail, in terms of understanding how you're going to build your final images, right? So there's a reason why I gave you this idea of a bunch of thieves accidentally awaken a demon who kills them, right? And it's not that I wanted to put you in competition with the Diablo trailer. That's not what I wanted to do. What I wanted to do is have you guys go and do your initial creative thinking about it, but then understanding there's a level of deepness that we need to take the idea to sort of bring it to not bring it to life, because you've already brought your ideas to life. Just bring it, amplify the drama, right? Amplify the drama and just make it incredibly powerful, right? I want to take your 22 caliber shot in terms of your creativity and turn it into an RPG, right? So every visual that you do, every story idea that you come up with, we're just going to find ways of intensifying it, right? And making it that much more powerful. So I'm hoping that, inside that trailer, I closed it, but it was like, what, 9-minute trailer or 5-minute trailer, something like that. Inside of that, there's so much information that's been jam-packed into it, from lighting, through animation, to posing, to acting, to performance, to shot design, concept art, everything, right? It all kind of, sound design, music, all of it kind of comes in together to craft this, what I believe is an excellent moment. And I believe the team won an award for it at one of the video game awards ceremonies. So very well deserving, right? Okay, so let's pop back over to Photoshop, right? So I left this up because I got another commission for a little bit of design work on mice characters for a children's book. So I decided I'd leave this up. One of my first stages is to just do this, right? I'll fill up a whole page with a variety of different ideas. I don't have any kind of clarity on what the mice characters look like just yet. I'm just doing exploration, right? So again, I start off with sort of a very, very simple warm-up drawing. So that looks awful, but it's a warm-up drawing. Well, in fact, over here, I started drawing the mouse head. I'm like, man, I got to get into it. But you got to allow yourself to warm up when you're drawing. So this is an important concept that I want all of you guys to take away, right? We warm up for everything. We warm up for playing music. We warm up for doing sports. We warm up for everything. And yet when it comes to drawing, we expect that we can draw good right out of the gate, right? Like with everything, you will draw better if you give yourself some warm-up time, right? So what is warm-up time? Just staying loose and scribbling. You notice I'm not spending a lot of time on each of these, right? I'm just moving as quickly as I can through it. Here I'm thinking about performance a little bit, right? And then just sort of figuring the character out, right? So this is an important takeaway for you guys, because we'll be taking a look at how we approach life drawing in a similar manner, right? Okay, so oh yeah, I was going to go back to actually the demons. I'd like you to, on the F track, post up your final work today or this week or whatever. I will take a look at it and give you sort of feedback on it and things like that, but we're going to leave that now, and then we're going to move on to other things, right? So let's button up your guys' ideas for the thieves and the demon, unless you're like super inspired and you want to build out a nice epic kind of story based on it. But let's post up all the final stuff and then we'll leave it behind. got to remember where I saved that initial visual studies muscle guy. There we go. No, don't worry about it. If you forgot about the demon concept, let's kind of leave it behind, right? So, if anything, what I'd like you, because the whole demon concept was for me to get you guys, for me to understand where you guys are coming from conceptually, right? So there's already, I've seen that there's some of you who would like to start off with demon design. Others start off with environment. Others start off thinking more technically, right? And more of you like to dive into just writing the script. So there's a variety of different ways of approaching it. Which one's the right way? They are all the right way. Something that I have to kind of warn you about creativity, right? There is no right way to engage with anything. And oftentimes the biggest mistake is that people will watch a tutorial and go, well, that's the way to do it, right? And I can tell you emphatically, when I approach a character model, right, like modeling a human head or whatever, I take a different approach every single time, right? There's no set, I'm going to start off with a box, etc. Or I'm not going to dive into ZBrush, do a little bit, move it to Maya, or I'll do the block out in Maya first, then move it into ZBrush. There's none of that. There's no set way I do it. Sometimes I use Z-sketching inside of ZBrush. Sometimes I use something else, right? It really kind of depends on the moment because I approach drawing the same way. Sometimes I'll start with a chest and torso. Sometimes I'll start with a head, right? It really sort of depends. And if you lock yourself into one particular way of doing something, you're actually limiting your creativity a little bit. And not a lot of tutorials out there will tell you this, right? But it's important to me that you guys find whatever avenue you can to your creativity. Because creativity is a doorway into some awesome visuals. And the doorway is small and very tiny and rapidly closing, right? So you got to get through it quick to find your idea. You can upload anything on F-Track, by the way. So let me move this over. Do you guys remember for the last class? I think it was with you guys. So if I go to F-Track. Originally, I set up F-Track last year to just deal with assignment stuff. But there was a lot of people like yourselves, like-minded artists who just wanted to post their personal work up as well. So if we go into the level 4 concept art, right? So I created a dev concept art area, and in here I just created a task for character. And in the versions of the character, yeah, I can see loads of people have put stuff up, right? So you can just throw stuff in there, right? You can upload anything, right? And then I can go through and I can take a look at this stuff. The value of it is that I'll be able to kind of open it in a web player and I'll be able to feed back on this stuff here, right? Cool. It's really, really cool. Armor design. Nice. That's pretty cool. So, but yeah, this gives me an opportunity to sort of get in there and feed back on your guys' work, right? And it's a lot more productive than posting it in Discord and getting a thread of comments replying back, right? This way, the comments, the drawovers, and the feedback is just attached to your piece of artwork, and that way you can refer to it, right? So it might be more beneficial for you, right? Character design from months ago? Yeah, share it. Definitely. Pop it up there. Okay, so let's get to the nitty-gritty. I've been dying to kind of dive into this character. Now, one of the big problems of approaching a design that you've left for a long time, and you'll see it now when I'm lecturing you guys, is plugging back in. Oh, so difficult to plug back in, right? So oftentimes it's good practice to just come in here and then just do a couple of warm-up drawings, right? Maybe somewhere along the same lines of your character that you're working on. Just to kind of get yourself plugged back in again, right? I'm pretty much doing an identical pose. I don't want to do that. But again, I'm just sort of trying to get back into the swing of things a little bit. And again, as with everything, right? You got to warm up. You got to do it. So I'm just trying to warm up here a little bit. Something like that. I don't know. And it doesn't have to be the same character. You can, try something a little bit different. I don't know, something like that. Okay, so if you guys have Photoshop open, just do a few different warm-ups. What I'm gonna do, and I just realized I'm really bad for this. I don't generally tend to stop and give breaks simply because I'm just tunnel vision to the thing I'm doing. So I'm gonna give you guys a 5-minute break, just because we've been at the Diablo trailer for a while. I'm gonna go grab a cup of coffee, and I'll come back and I'll see if I can dive back into the character sketch. But I'm gonna start teaching you a little bit about the anatomical structures that I'm looking for. So 5 minutes just to grab something to drink, and we'll come back and we'll reconvene here. And then we got another half hour to go, and then that'll be it for today. Cool. I will be right back, guys. left my Twitch stream running. That was brilliant. Way to go, Al. All right. Oh, okay. So there's questions about how to upload stuff to F-Track, right? So here we go. Let me pop open F-Track again here. So let's. So inside F-Track here, right? I'll walk you guys through from the very beginning with F-Track, right? So we'll go to the overview page that you see when you log on, right? So I've just logged on to F-Track. I'm looking at it here. And I want to go to level 4 year 1 games. Go to the 3 dots in the right corner. The 3 dots. And then go to. Then we get into our project here. And you can see under the development folder, we've got, oh, sorry, I went to the games one. We want the animation one. Right? So you go to the animation one, level 4, 3 dots, go to. So in here, we've got our module specific areas, but we've got concept art here, right? And you want to click on the category, which is character. Then you click on that, a sidebar will open. Boom. And it'll likely open at the notes page. So all you do is you go over to your versions, and it says right here, drag and drop your files here, or browse. So we click on browse, it'll do exactly that. Open up a browser window, you can find exactly what you want to upload, and you can upload it there, right? Or again, you can just drag and drop your file onto here, and it'll upload it. Yeah, don't worry about being confused. One of the things that this course is trying to kind of introduce you to is just how many digital tools you'll sort of be involved with once you start working on serious animations and things like that. So I want to get you guys comfortable as soon as possible on all this stuff. Someone's got a walk cycle? Joe, dude, upload your walk cycle. Okay, so let me pop back again, back into Photoshop. We'll pick this up. So I've got my warm-up layer. I don't really need it anymore, so I'm going to trash it, right? And we'll pop back here. So I kind of want to start building out this character. Now, the area I'm going to go to, because I know that I got to warm into the drawing, so I'm going to start by a simple shape. I'm going to hit the pelvic area. Now, how do we get this pelvis area looking correct, right? Well, the one thing that I generally tend to do, and this is really important because it shows you a really handy tip or trick that I did in my early years in terms of concept art and drawing, right? You look at clothing, right? So if I take a look at let's one quick second here. Just want to find a good image, right? Yeah, we'll do this one. Open image in the tab. There you go. Right? So if you look at a set of Y-fronts, right? This is the shape that you want to draw for that perfect kind of pelvis, right? So you got your waist, and then you draw the side bit, and then you draw this sort of, I guess, diamond shape-ish. And that's exactly what I'm drawing here, is I'm just drawing a set of Y-fronts, right? And boom, you've got your pelvis. So the reason why I wanted to bring this up is because the other problem area of anatomy people have in terms of drawing is the foot, right? It's one of the many ones anyway. So if we take a look at, I'm going to try and find a good one here. That's not too bad. What I used to do for feet to help me figure out how to draw feet is I would just simply draw a pair of Nikes, right? And the reason why I would do this is because this would sort of help me figure out, okay, where's that area that the ankle occupies and how am I going to deal with that? Oftentimes when I was drawing feet way back in the early days, I forget this bit here. Now, actually, let me I'm going to take a quick screen capture of this so I can draw on it, actually. There we go. Okay. Let's break this down a little bit. Bring this guy over. Right. Okay. I could have sworn there was a pen tool. There's no pen tool in here. All right. Well, so this is the area here that I would generally tend to forget in my early sort of attempts at illustrating the human foot, right? So I would use the Nike shoe to give me kind of a clearer understanding of the shapes that are involved to break down and build the foot. And you'll see that once we get down to the character design and we start tackling the foot, right? So your biggest hint is in clothing, right? Because a lot of clothing designers will be following anatomical structure fairly rigidly to get form-fitting, comfortable clothing, right? So oftentimes, a lot of that will give you a hint as to how to approach certain types of anatomy, right? It doesn't negate having to study anatomy to a certain degree, right? So I've got that sort of sketched in. I'll probably go down and do the legs. Now, the curvature inside the Y front is really important in terms of telling people which way your character's facing. So notice how I do a cavity here, but then I've got the reverse curve here. So that indicates that that outside leg is pointing away from the audience and the inside leg is pointing towards the audience, right? So I'm going to come down and come down this way. Now you can see I'm doing a little bit of a curve here. So that curve describes there's a muscle in here. It's an adductor. I think it's an adductor muscle inside there. And so that's what that curve sort of describes there. Now knees. I've always had trouble with knees, right? Until I ran into a concept artist who said, yeah, just do a circle there first. If you want to get fancy, just do something like that, right? Just cut it in half. Job done. Look at that. That's cool. Looks like a knee, right? And what you've done is you've drawn the patella down here, and I forget what it's called, the upper bit there, right? And then I'll bring a nice, smooth, kind of contrasting curve on the outside. Now I want to talk a little bit about contrasting curves when dealing with anatomy, because that's very, very important, right? So if we were to take a look at, say, drawing an arm, and this will happen to you guys when you guys are sort of focused on studying anatomy, and it's something I want you to be aware of. Right? When you're drawing an arm, there's a tendency to go, okay, I'm going to draw the deltoid. I'll do the, anterior, posterior, medial deltoid, and then I'll draw the bicep here, and then the tricep muscle here, and then we'll draw the, the connective muscles in there, and then I'll draw the brachioradialis here, and then I forget what the other muscle is on the outside of there. I'll draw that there, and then the wrist, and what you end up doing is you end up creating what's called sausage link drawing, right? You end up drawing body parts and they end up looking like sausage links, right? That's bad, right? You don't want to do that, right? So what do you do? How do you approach anatomy from a character designer's perspective? Well, you look at contrasting curves, right? So here's what I mean by that, right? And a lot of the Disney guys sort of pioneered this, right? So if I'm drawing an arm, right? Right, I'll do it like that. So notice how the long, smoother curves, almost straight lines, are on the outside of the object, of the anatomy, describing the larger muscles, and then the smaller ones have more, they're bumpier, They've got more curves. They've got more description as to what the frequency of those curves are doing, right? So this is how we want to approach it, right? The larger, more exterior muscles are long, smooth, silky strokes. And then the interior muscles, the ones that are a little bit more detailed, like the abdominals and the chest and the biceps and stuff, are a little bit more surface relief definition, right? And remember, we want to stay away from that whole sausage link drawing. So that's what I got going on here, right? Nice long curve and something that has a little bit more movement in the curve on the inside, right? Now, I'm going to back up because I want to make sure that proportionally I'm not going off track. That's the danger of digital drawing, is that when you zoom in, you could be detailing and you'll forget to zoom out. And the minute you do, it's just like, whoa, my character's completely out of proportion. Mentally, I am checking this, shoulders, waists, knees, making sure they're relatively equidistant apart, right? And it doesn't have to be perfect. We're not laying pipe. You know, it just has to be reasonably close. And then the gastrocnemius muscle, which I've decided to cut short a little bit and contrast that with a smoother arc on the outside. And I'm going to contrast that to devote a little bit more kind of time to a boot of some kind. And how to draw feet. Okay, now we're just sort of sketching out a rough outline of a character. So we can get away with a lot of caricature. Right, so I'll talk a little bit about feet. Front on feet. How many out there have a nightmarish time doing front on feet? It's probably a fair few of you. Oh, new messages. Ooh, I gotta scroll down. Oh yeah, okay, that's all good. I'm all caught up. All caught up in the chat. Yes, little domes. There you go. So you're on the right track. You simplify that in terms of the shape language, right? So here, all I'm doing is little triangle. Right? Little triangle. There you go. Front on foot. Right? So there's a few things that I'm doing here. I'm going to favor the big toe and the instep, right? So that triangle is not dead center of that leg, right? And remember, I was saying all the bumpy curves are on the inside. Well, that foot counts. So we got like long, silky curves, almost straight on the outside. So what does that long kind of silky curve on the outside do for us? Well, it's almost a straight line, and a straight line is a line of power. So it really emphasizes that powerful stance of our character, right? Now at this point, I'm probably going to want to flip my drawing. I think I got it tied to a, no, I don't have it tied to a hotkey. I did. So I'm going to need to flip my drawing before I continue on. So I'm going to pop over into my Wacom tablet properties, and I'm going to take a look at the Photoshop function keys here. And oh, I do have it. I've got it tied to the second one down. So let's flip that drawing and see if we're still on track. Control Alt Shift H, I think it was. Okay, so I'm going to go to my image rotation and flip canvas horizontal. There we go. Must have lost the hotkey assignment. Not looking too bad so far. I might want to make just a slight adjustment in the rough, right? So I'm going to come down into the rough drawing and bring this, Control T, right? I'm just going to rotate this guy ever so slightly and maybe bring it out just a touch. And then I'm going to flip this guy back again. I need to tie that to a hotkey. So let's set this up on a hotkey. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that I've got that image rotation flip horizontal available to me as I'm sketching, right? So let's go over to my edit. We go way down here. We've got keyboard shortcuts. Pop open the keyboard shortcuts. Now the function we want, thankfully, Photoshop organizes itself in terms of menu systems when you're setting up your hotkeys. So we want to go to where we accessed our image, and we did our image rotation, flip horizontal. Yeah, it's not assigned. So Control Alt Shift H is what I do. And I use the Control Alt Shift H because I know that that's likely not an existing hotkey, and so it won't interfere with anything else, right? So I'm going to hit accept. So we get that hotkey set up, and I'm going to come back to my Wacom tablet properties, and in the keystroke for flip, Control Alt Shift H, yeah, it's there. So that's cool. So I'm going to test it. Let's hit that second kind of hotkey. It's not working. Let's try again. What I'll probably do is let's just see if we can reassign it. So I'm going to clear this. Control Alt Shift H. And there's a second instance of Photoshop. Maybe that's causing some weirdness. Yeah, let's set this one too. Control Alt Shift H. Now it's working. There we go. Okay, so I might decide to come and work at this angle for a little bit, just because, you know, I haven't really chosen what angle that I want at the moment, right? So I'm gonna make a couple of fixes here. Bring that up, right? Now here I'm trying to make sure that I have a connecting line through here, right? Now this is a sort of a method that not pioneered but defined by this guy named Riley. He's a New York character concept designer, and he has a wonderful method where you're looking for curves that go through the entire character, right? So in here, the most important part of the knee at this point is not the top bit, it's the bottom bit, right? So you can almost connect up the knee with the long arc of the leg, and then just draw that there, right? And then I always put a little bit of pause for where the back of the knee is. And then, now, I want to be sure that I'm handling this bit okay. So I remember I choked up the gastrocnemius muscle ever so slightly, so I want to maintain that. And then triangle, right? I believe it's an isosceles triangle, yeah. Oh, it's a little bit, you know what? A little bit short. So just gonna come up here, boom, Control T, hold down my Shift key. Nope. And bring that up just a touch. And so I'm gonna flip that again, check it out. Okay, and I'm just going to go in there. Okay, so that's not too bad. I'm all right with that. Because I do know, one of the things that you want to try to do is get through this as quickly as possible. So let's talk a little bit about the foot, because I think this will be helpful for you guys, right? So let's say you map out the foot, and I'm going to flip it because it's actually easier for me to talk about it this way. So what do you do with this triangle, right? So again, we'll take a look at the old Nike shoe, right? There's lots of stuff going on in the Nike shoe, right? Let's go back to the Snagit screen capture, right? So I'm going to draw the outside of the foot, which will be a little bit different from the inside of the foot, right? The outside of the foot, I'm going to maintain this straight line, but then I'm going to tweak that. I'm going to tweak that. Oop. Why? Well, I'm going to tweak that toe angle up ever so slightly. It's suddenly no longer drawing arrows for me. That's weird. Oh, there we go. Okay. So I'll show you what I mean. So come here, right? So first of all, in my head, I've now broken this triangle into 3 pieces, right? 3 pieces. We got the back piece here, right? We got that band that travels through, I guess, the bridge of the foot, and then this bit here. Now this bit here is what I'm going to send upward, right? See that? Just by tilting that ever so slightly upward, right? Feels more like a foot, right? So let's take a look at the other side. So let's say we flip that foot the other way. We got a triangle. Well, the instep is where I put this, and then we flip that up. So I'll hit it with this line and this curve, right? So nothing screams the inside of the foot than that instep, right? And of course, I'm thinking about the sections of the foot at the same time as well, right? And that's how you generally approach it. I'm hoping this is oversimplified, or not oversimplified, but simplified the foot for you guys enough so that you understand the shapes that you're working with and what you're trying to manipulate in that regard. So basically when you're laying down your feet, simple shapes, right? Just a triangle and you're good. So let's take this and I'll delete these guys. Right. Okay, any questions about that? Okay, so now I've gone through a couple of different techniques with you guys, right? So I've talked about, and I'm doing this all in one drawing, but be clear, I'm showing you separate techniques. So let's do a quick summation, right? The first technique was to look at existing clothing, especially form-fitting clothing, for clues on shape language. So what do I mean by shape language? What we're trying to do is we're trying to take a look at a complex shape, like a pelvis, and go, I can't draw the pelvis, it's like really complicated. But then just turning it into like an inverted pentagram or what have you, right? Or taking a look at Y-fronts to get that simple basic shape and then drawing that, because it's a lot easier to draw those simple shapes than anything complicated. We talked a little bit about contrasting curves and the importance of contrasting curves in terms of creating sort of a shorthand impression of anatomy, right? So here we're trying to give the impression of quadriceps versus gastrocnemius muscles and things like that, right? So there's that. Again, with the feet, it's about breaking it down into simple shapes, right? And then flipping the drawing, right? So there's a few different techniques at play here, right? Now, when we go to the upper body, we're going to start taking a look at anatomy and trying to understand anatomy a little bit more, right? So generally I tend to use bodybuilder photographs, but in this case, let's take a look at, well, actually, let's take a look at both. So my go-to for male anatomy in terms of a character is the Hulk, right? Let's find, this might be a good actually compromise. This is the old 70s Hulk. But because he's a bodybuilder, we're looking at real muscle, so it might be a good thing to sort of reference. I'll tell you what, I'll pop this. Let's open this. Actually, I'm going to pop open this image, right? And we'll take a look at another CG artist's interpretation of the Hulk, right? And we'll talk about the dangers of using CG reference as reference for your CG work and the dangers of it and why you want to stay away from it. Okay, so let's take a look at Lou Ferrigno, right? Now, the few things that I'm going to take a look at is not only the shape and placement of the bicep, but what it looks like when twisted to the side. So there's a few different things that you want to be investigating when you're looking at photo reference. What I'm going to be sort of studying is, actually, let's see if we can do this. I'm going to control copy, and we'll take it right into Photoshop so I can draw over top of it, right? And I'll group this guy, and we'll call this folder reference. And let's chuck a layer over top, right? So I'm going to come in here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at little things like how the clavicle comes down like this, and then up, and then across, right? So the clavicle muscle is a key feature on a male superhero type character. It's always there. And the reason why is it forms this straight line shelf. It's so important that if we take a look at Bruce Timm and his caricature of the Batman, if we take a look at the Batman, you'll see how important that straight line is. See that straight line there? It's really graphic, really powerful, right? That's the clavicles, right? So that's how important that feature is on the human body, right? These guys here are called the trapezius muscles. Oh, let me go back to Photoshop. So you got the trapezius muscles, and they're kind of important and cool because they form a triangle towards the head, right? And then we'll talk a little bit about the sternocleidomastoid muscle. So the sternocleidomastoid muscle is this muscle here. It's that strong, it's like when Superman's posing, that sternocleidomastoid is that straight line. That straight line goes all the way through Superman's pose when he's standing on a building ledge, all the way down to his heel, right? This is a really, really powerful line in any kind of super heroic character design, right? So that's something to sort of be aware of, right? So let's start there. Those are some of the key features that I kind of want to tackle in here. Oh yeah, and I'm going to flip over real quick so we can take a look at this Hulk, right? Now, there are a few, you can see that there are a few differences in the two different Hulks. So first of all, this is a much more caricatured version of human anatomy, so that's danger number one, because you never know exactly what you're drawing, right? And I got two new messages. Where are these messages hiding? Okay. And number two, you can see some of the subtle detailing that I talked about in terms of Lou Ferrigno are not there on this CG Hulk, right? Internet said no. Oh, okay. That's okay, Julia. I think we're still streaming, so you should still be able to catch up on this. Okay, so let's apply this to drawing, right? So I'm going to come in here. So I've roughed in my pectoral muscles. The pectorals are the chest here, right? So let's pop back down to my drawing layer, right? Now again, I'm carving into my existing rough drawing. So I'll reference that a couple times during this, right? So here you can see I've drawn this little shape here. That's the posterior deltoid. There's the medial deltoid, and then there's an anterior deltoid. So the shoulder muscle is actually, if we're looking at the shoulder from top down, we've actually got three muscles working on our shoulder. And then we got a little dip in here. This is called the suprasternal notch. But we've got three muscles that make up our deltoid, or our shoulder muscle, right? And those are incredibly fun to draw, especially on like huge, bulking, barbaric type guys. So I'm just dropping hints of it. I don't want to spend too much time on it. But here, what I want to do is I want to try to figure out what that bicep is doing, right? So here, if we take a look at that bicep, right? This is kind of the shape of the bicep on the side. And I can see that the tricep muscle is so big, it's actually bracketing it, kind of, on either side. Right? See that? So that's what I'm going to draw in here. Right? You can see I started that last session. Right? So here, I'm drawing a little bit of that bicep muscle here. Ah, yes, stupid. Right? So I got a little bit of that bicep muscle, and I'm bracketing it with a tricep muscle behind it. Right? And then a little bit here, right? You can see it's quite scribbly because I'm not entirely sure how far I want to bring that tricep muscle out, right? But that's okay because we're still in roughing mode. Now I stopped there because according to my rough, I'm going to be doing foreshortening on the forearm, right? I'll get to that because I want to talk about strategies for dealing with foreshortening, right? Let's go to the other side. Same kind of deal, right? We got the bicep. It's going to be here. You can see I've got a little bit of tricep sneaking up underneath it. A little bit of tricep coming up over top. Now, how do we connect that with the deltoid muscle, right? So I'll show you what I'm talking about because it's important as we start to consider sort of anatomy in our heroic characters, right? So if I go to here and say bodybuilder shoulder, let's take a look at this guy. I'm gonna right click. There we go. Right. So here, this is what I'm talking about. This is the anterior deltoid, medial deltoid, posterior deltoid. And that little dip, that's the suprasternal notch. Now look at how brilliant nature is in terms of how it's dovetailed muscles together. Remember I was talking about the trapezius muscle? Look how it dovetails right into that notch, just fits right in there, right? Same thing with where the shoulders end. The shoulders, they come into this teardrop shape, and I'll talk more about the teardrop shape in a sec. And the teardrop shape sort of dovetails between the tricep and the bicep. So that's where that goes, right? So it's like, oh, okay, cool. So I'm going to take that, I've already done it here, take that tricep muscle and fit it in here. See that? So I've dovetailed it between the line that has my bicep and the line that has my tricep. And stick it in there, right? Just to show everything neatly dovetailing together, right? You can see I've got my clavicles there giving me that strong sort of line. So let's go in and talk a little bit about sort of the brachioradialis muscle, right? So I'm just going to come down with a couple of straight lines here, right? And what I want to do is I want to catch that notch sort of in the arm here. And what that notch is it's a place where I don't know if you can see the shadowing on the forearm, but it's where this muscle here, the brachioradialis muscle, comes onto one side and on the other side and gives that little dip. Now that little dip here in your arm is there for a reason. And again, the brilliance of Mother Nature. So I can fold my arm and the bicep will fit right in that little notch, right? So that I can bend my arm, right? That's how the muscles are designed. The other thing that you might find quite interesting, actually I'll talk about the brachioradialis twist once we get into modeling, right? So the brachioradialis is, again, the big sort of forearm muscle here, right? So that brachioradialis is this guy here. And I've given him Popeye arms for a reason in the rough, because I just want to exaggerate the size of those forearms. So this is where I'm taking the reference material and going a little bit further with it, right? So same with down here, right? So this one, the contrasting curves go the other way, right? So I'm putting a long sort of looping curve down here and the more bumpy curve up there. The reason why? Well, because gravity pulls that loose muscle flesh down like this, making a soft sort of gentle arc. But when you tense your muscle, all the bumpiness appears on the top of the forearm, right? So that's sort of what I'm doing there. I will oftentimes give my characters a wristband that I'll later delete or erase or whatever. It's just to remind myself to not to forget to draw the wrist. You will find that a lot of early character designs that you do, you'll forget to actually draw the wrist. It's like a physical piece that you need to draw in there and just remember, right? So there's that, and then I'm just going to draw the bog standard sort of fist silhouette thing, right? I'm a bit iffy on the character balance at the moment, so let me try and flip this guy. Yeah, it's okay. You know what? I'm just going to go for it. Because with the size of the forearm, I feel like we need to make some adjustments. And I'm going to something like that. So what I'm trying to do is redistribute the weight because his upper body is really huge. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about foreshortening, and we'll sort of leave it at that. So now we've got the other arm to deal with, which is a forearm coming out towards you, towards camera, right? So I'm going to introduce you to a technique called geometrics, right? So a lot of times when you first start dealing with foreshortening, it's like, I'm going to hold my arm out. How do you draw that? How do you draw that? It's like really complicated, right? Because body parts are coming at you and you can't really quite identify simple shapes, right? Well, geometrics is this technique of turning things into simple geometric objects. So I can't draw a forearm coming out at me like that, but what I can draw is a cylinder, right? I can do that. The cylinder helps me to figure out how that shape is receding away from camera, doesn't it? And hopefully you can see that as demonstrated there, right? In fact, you can play with that cylinder shape even more and say, you know what? It's really coming out to camera, right? See that? So when you alter the shape that you're creating with that cylinder, you can really change how far that object is coming towards you, or at what angle it sits, and all that kind of stuff. Now I've gotten to the point where I've used that technique so much, I'm sort of doing it in my head, but that's how I see it. So in fact, when I'm approaching this, I might draw the wrist first. Remember, I'm drawing that wristband, right? And then I kind of know sort of what shape that's gonna eventually sort of make. I think I might have dropped the elbow a little bit too low. That's okay. Right? And so that's how I deal with that arm there. And I might actually tilt the hand a little bit. Something like that. So I'm just going to block in the hands because I want to talk a little bit about hands. So I'm going to zoom out and make sure I haven't completely lost track of the drawing. It no longer looks like he's holding a pole. Yeah, so I'm not entirely sure what he's holding. And you can see that indecision comes through when you're doing design work. So it's much better to make solid decisions as you're drawing. It's like, look, he's going to be holding a spear. Once you know that, you can make these firmer decisions about what you're doing with body parts and things like that. Same with performance. If you know exactly what the character is doing and what they're thinking and what they're about to do, or what mental state they're in, or what emotional state they're in, it becomes 1,000 times easier to design, right? Okay, so I'm just going to do a quick flip. It's not too bad so far. It's good. There's a few tweaks and changes and things that might need to happen, but as a starting point, it's okay. I'm just grouping this, selecting all the layers and hitting Control G, so it's a nice compact group. So I can hit the V key to get to my move tool, and I can hit the up arrow and tweak the character up so he's sitting a little bit more comfortably in the frame, right? So I've just moved him up, right? And then just flipping back and forth just to make sure he reads okay from both angles, right? And then I'm going to save off a copy. The last thing I'm going to do is talk a little bit about hands, right? And I will show you the best reference on the planet for hands. And again, it's going to Bruce Timm. So even though I'm drawing sort of realistic hands, Bruce Timm gave me the clue as to how to approach it, right? So let's go into Bruce Timm. Model shoot. Go to images. There it is. For me, this is the best hand reference sheet on the planet. Open image in new tab. Right? because it showed me the angles that you need to deal with when drawing the hand, right? So let me control copy and paste this into Photoshop. It'd be easier for us to discuss, I think. I'll go back to my reference folder, light that up, turn those guys off, control paste it in here, and let's bring this up. Chuck another layer on there, and switch my ink. So this here gave me the first clue as to what I need to do with the shape of the hands, right? So when you take a look at the hand, there are a few things that we can do straight off the bat. Number one, we have a tendency to draw the hands as a square, which is okay. It's good for blocking it out. But we need to take a look at two things. Number one, the hand is square shaped, but notice that there's an equal amount for the fingers, right? So that's one thing. The other thing is the shape of the hand sort of recedes towards what's called the knife edge of the hand. So a couple of things I want to point out. Number one, we've got a thinner outside edge and a thicker inside edge, right? So you're a lot thicker in your hand through here and here. It's smaller here and it's wider here, right? So again, this Bruce Timm model sheet is great because it shows it starts quite wide here and it goes to quite thin there, right? Same with the distribution of the knuckles. The knuckles start fairly wide apart and they go to fairly close together. So you can see that everything fans towards what's called the knife edge of the hand, right? The thumb as well, the thumb does not sit sort of perpendicular to the rest of the hand. I see character models like this all the time, and it drives me up the wall. I see character designs like this all the time. The thumb is not there, coplanar to the hand. It's actually dropping down at an angle, right? That thumb is dropping down at an angle from the rest of the hand. So many people forget it. It's like a key rookie mistake, right? So we need to remember those few characteristics of the hand. So I'm going to zoom out. And you can see that everything else in Bruce Timm's model sheet builds on the philosophy of this drawing, right? So just fanning things together, making sure that everything starts out wide and then closes up a little bit tighter towards the knife edge of the hand, etc., right? And that's it. So I recommend, if you are going to be looking at reference for hands, start off with the Bruce Timm hand model sheet, right? It's fantastic. So a few other tips about hands. So if I were to come in here and let's let me kill that, pop this open. Okay, so if I were to draw, say, a hand like this, right? So notice I'm immediately adopting Bruce Timm's sort of shape for the base of the hand. This is where the thumb is going to drop out. Then we got the first finger, then we got the two middle fingers, and then the last finger, right? Now this is my own personal discovery in terms of drawing hands. Finger grouping looks more aesthetically pleasing if you do the following, right? So I've got that. I've got the two fingers grouped in the middle. I've got one finger here, and I'm grouping all three on the other side. And then I'll do the opposite as well. So I've got the base of the hand, and I might group those fingers together and then just have the pinky, right? So finger grouping tends to kind of help the aesthetic interpretation of the hand. A splayed, sort of stressed hand is very ugly to look at, and it's not as aesthetically pleasing, right? So it's just something that I've discovered over time, right? In our case, our character's making fists, so it's not that big a deal, right? So that's it. We'll kind of tackle more of this character a little bit later. I'm actually going to go with this, I think, and do some more drawing because this character outline is inspiring me. So I'll probably do a further development, but I'll keep my layers separate so that I can walk you through some of the changes that I've made. And that takes us to 10 past 12. Do you guys have any questions at all today or comments about today's session? You guys are all still there, right? I hope. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yep. Yeah, okay, cool. Cool. Hopefully you found that helpful in terms of how to play with very, very simple shapes. Now, I'm trying to pull you back from detailed drawing to show you that the underlying techniques are very, very simple, right? Yeah, have a play with a hand sheet. It's excellent. For me, it was an epiphany. Might not work for everybody, but give it a try, right? Once I started studying that, it all sort of made sense to me. And I started drawing much better hands after that. Yeah, cool. Okay, we'll leave it at that. I'll let you guys go. I'll do some closing thoughts on the Twitch stream, and then we will see you guys for the animation class. Oh, yeah. Oh, I did want to touch on Maya a little bit today. That just reminded me. But we're out of time. But I will go over a lot more Maya stuff when we meet again tomorrow. I'll talk to you guys later. Cheers, guys. Okay, so that's it. I'm just taking a look at my character sketch via the Twitch screen, just because a different angle is always good. That's interesting. It's like taking a step back from your canvas and having a look. Just flipping it back and forth. Yeah, no, I need to re-attack that arm. I think it's way too big. But, it's sort of part and parcel of the fact that I haven't made a decision. Do I want to make this, like, uber exaggerated Hulk-type character, or do I want to bring him more towards human proportion? I haven't made the decision yet. But I do know that when I started building out that larger arm, the legs didn't feel right in terms of overall character balance, right? So I'll probably investigate that a little bit more, right? One of the key takeaways for this, though, is how loose, how rough that I work, how many mistakes that I make, how many layers I put in as I try to figure out my drawing. Even the use of lasso and transforming bits of your drawing. That's something I didn't do for the longest time. And I had another concept artist who I respect very much just say to me, man, you're using Photoshop. Why don't you use Photoshop? I was like, oh yeah, okay. But I think we get this feeling that we're cheating. Unless it all comes from one pencil tool, all immediately onto one layer, we feel like we're cheating as an artist. And we're really not, right? Because being able to manipulate body parts using the lasso and transform tool still requires that you have an understanding of weight, mass, and proportion, and be able to visually translate that, It's the same thing with environment guys that I know who will block out their perspective in a 3D package and then render that out as a template to do the perspective. It doesn't mean they can't draw perspective. Oh boy, can they ever draw perspective. I work with some guys who are total perspective gurus. But it's all about giving yourself the tools to facilitate the more important parts of the visualization. You have to get to the concept quickly. You can't be sitting... Yeah, I mean, when you're doing a concept piece, you're not showing off how good you are at perspective. You're capturing a concept, right? So you need to get there quickly. And that's where your true artistry comes through. Not the fact that you can achieve a perfectly balanced perspective breakdown of an architectural rendering, but that you can create that really cool, spooky looking temple, right? So that's kind of where you want to get. So I encourage actually any digital artists out there to use any and every tool that you have, short of directly copying, and I'll talk about that in later lectures, right? But use any tool that you have at your disposal to help you achieve your vision, right? And Blender's Grease Pencil tool has a couple of brilliant features that I'm playing with that do exactly that. They help me to figure out my lighting and a bunch of other stuff. So anyway, more on that later. Tomorrow I'll be carrying on with the animation lecture, and then we'll take it from there. Okay, thanks a lot for checking in, and I'll talk to you guys later.